Hello, and welcome to Pillar Talk. I am your host, Rochelle Armstrong, and during each episode, we're going to have guests from different backgrounds or different professions, and they're going to pick one of the 12 pillars from my book, Simply Complex, Leading Out of Authenticity. And they're going to share with us how that pillar has really shaped them into the person they are today. And so I'm super excited. We have a distinguished guest with us today, Mr. John Brown, and I want him to share a little more with you about who he is and what it is that he does before we actually jump into the interview. So, Mr. Brown, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing this morning, Rochelle?
I'm doing great. I have to say, I'm really humbled and really honored that you're here today. And although I know a little about your background because we have former roots at a former company, tell our listeners just a little more about who you are and what it is that you do before we start talking about your environment.
Sure thing. So I'm John Brown. I'm the Senior Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer at Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Louisiana in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where I've been in this role for 4 years. But the past 25 or so years, I've been in different companies, different industries, some in insurance, some in technology, some in risk management. And as you mentioned, Rochelle, we crossed paths at a former employer where I spent 12 years running retail service operations. And so for me, transitioning to human resources, sort of at this stage of my career, is not common for many. But I do think by the time we get through the discussion, I think how we, the environment around us, how we grow up, the things that are instilled in us and the experiences that we have, I think really prepare us for whatever is coming next. So what seems to be a strange transition, how do you go from being my degree is in engineering, never done a day of engineering in my life, right?
Wow.
But running service organizations to now transitioning to HR, again, I think it really gets at the core of environment and one's experiences and how it prepares you for things that are coming. So I'm excited to be here today and look forward to the discussion.
Wow, nicely stated. And you're such a eloquent speaker, and that's one of the things that you're known for. In addition, a servant leader and just a leader who is used to making connections and would encourage his leaders to make connections. And so, out of selfish curiosity, one of the questions I have, and I'm sure some of our listeners may have, what made you or compelled you to do this interview today?
Yeah. So I'll tell you the story. I mean, to me, it's pretty straightforward, but it's so I'm a newbie to Facebook, right? I've only been on Facebook for about a year and a half, just before the pandemic. I got on Facebook again because of responsibilities I have in the community, on boards at my church. I just wanted to be prepared for us to stay connected because we were all about to disperse to some extent. And as a result, I'm being a newbie. I still try to keep up with individuals that I knew from times past. And as you mentioned, though we'd never worked directly together, I was aware. I tried to pay attention to individuals who are making great things happen, even if they're not in my organization. So, Rochelle, I remember you working with you and different interactions we had from years ago. And when I saw your attempt at rapping right down and getting that, it was let me connect. Right, one was to just give you a hard time and joke with you a bit, but also it's my ultimate goal to continue to encourage as much as I can, inspire individuals who, whether I have attempted to pour into them directly through working relationships or even from afar. So I'm excited to do this. You said you're humbled to have me on. I'm just a regular fellow. I'm excited and humbled to be able to share in this time, because I think the tenets of your book and being just excited for you and the work that you're doing, to see you out writing books and inspiring others. I mean, the more Rochelles we have in the world, candidly, the better the world is going to be, right? So I was compelled because this is great work that you're doing, and anything I can do to help support that, candidly, I'm just all in. So thank you for the opportunity to spend a few moments together today.
Well, I'm completely humbled and honored by that. And I sense that because although I didn't work for you directly, these are the things that I heard about you, like your character. And so I think I was out of town when I got the notification. And I mean, I'm so transparent and authentic. I'll just be honest. I'm like a little groupie where I was like, oh my
Yeah.
God, he wants to interview with me. So
Yes,
it's kind of like
yes.
the star effect where, oh
Yeah,
wow, like, yeah. So one thing I am careful of is to be a respecter of all persons,
sure.
because I
Right,
do believe that all people matter. And
right,
genuinely, I want to hear stories from everyone. And so, what I want to be careful not to do is like elevate any one person, because then it can be intimidating for someone else to come on the podcast because they
right,
don't think that they have a story to tell, or they don't think that they're prestigious enough. And so,
right,
I share that tidbit about me and just my reaction to you wanting to do the interview. And I mean that sincerely.
right.
But also, I just want those listening to know that although Mr. John Brown is indeed a legend, like he definitely is a change agent and he's a transformational leader and he is making a difference in and out of the community, that he's going to share a story with you that I hope gives you hope and inspire you to share your story as well. And so, is there anything else you want to touch on before I get all into your business around environment?
Not well, I will touch on what you just said, and I will just reinforce, because I agree 100%, Rochelle, which is to the other listeners and those who may be participating in an interview after me. Look, let me be really, really clear. The titles before or after my name, the role that I have, that means absolutely nothing, right? I wake up in the morning, have to put my trousers on one leg at a time, right? If you cut me, I bleed. If you show me a sad story or you tell me so, I'll cry, right? If you tell me a good joke, I'll laugh. So the reality is, there is no, I think that's part of the challenge we have in the workplace, in the
Mhm.
community, and just culturally, which is that we somehow differentiate, right? I can literally tell you the name of the individuals who are on the top of the org chart, and the folks who wash the windows for the folks at the top of the org chart, and they're all equally important, just like you said, Rochelle. So great point made. For anybody else who's watching and saying, I don't want to, I don't want to follow him. Please, I'm just a regular fella, and I'm like you and like others. I wake up every day trying to be perfect, trying to make a difference. I fail at the perfect thing. I failed every day, but I still get up every morning wanting to be perfect. I fail every day, but it doesn't prevent me from trying the next day. And so, in my path, I think most folks will find, those who get to know me, is that though I'm sitting in the seat that I'm in now, my path is very much like many of the folks who I trust are reading your book and trying to be inspired by it. Though I did not have your book as I was growing up, as I reflect on what's in there, that's my story. I think that's the beauty of this, is that we all have such connections with the things that we've gone through and what has contributed to who we are now, that there's just inspiration to be had throughout. So I get just as inspired by talking to others and sort of who I am and what I do. There's nothing special about that. We're all here trying to work and make up, like you said, a positive difference, and that's critically important.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So, listeners, not only did you hear it from me, because I have something to gain, but he doesn't. And so please continue to tune in and schedule those interviews. With that being said, that's a great segue for this interview. So I'm going to leave with every other question that I'm going to ask each guest, which is, in your particular case, you pick environment, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so what I would like for you to explain to the audience is, what type of environment did you grow up in, and how
Right.
did that shape you
Right.
negatively and positively?
Right. I picked environment. I picked it intentionally, Rochelle. And why? Because I think there's often a misconception that individuals who get to a certain level or who have accomplished certain things, whatever that happens to be, I think there is this misconception that somehow everyone was on some jaded or glitzy path. And so they sort of slid right into that role that looks very important to everyone. And the brutal reality is that that's just not the case, right? Especially not the case for me. So I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri. I'm the youngest of five born to my parents, but I'm in the middle. I have three younger sisters, two younger brothers who were adopted. So I grew up in a household where there were always lots of people around, kids around. My parents were foster parents, and so but we were poor. I mean, we were And we weren't just poor; we were po, right? P-O. We couldn't afford the last O and R. We were so poor. And I say that again to I have no shame in how I grew up. I have hold no resentment towards parents who were, they what they were able to give us and instill in us, Rochelle, were things that money couldn't buy. As
Amen.
a leader, as a servant, even now, there are things that are really important to some people that just are not important to me, right? That's how I can go through my daily life, not caring about one's title, one's color, one's role, where they live, what they drive. That means nothing to me, right? What
Same
means the
here.
most to me is, can you show up authentically, and can you be yourself? Can you, the things like telling the truth, being honest, honoring your word, you can be poor and do those things, right?
Yes.
So to me, it is. So growing up poor, it helped instill in me several things, right? And again, it wasn't, of course, when you grow up without, there are a number of negative things. Negative just being, you get to look around and see, man, there are things and people who experience things that I can't even relate to, right? Now, my dad worked outside the home he worked mostly steel type jobs, right? Manual laborer. My mom used to clean the homes of more affluent folks, right? And I recall vividly, at least on a couple of occasions, going with her. And, she'd have that obligatory conversation with me, which is, don't touch nothing, right? Don't you sit here while I clean. And when we're done, we'll go back home. But I just recall vividly sitting in the homes of a couple of folks who her job was to clean their home, right? Literally go in and clean their home. And that was a foreign concept, by the way, for me, which is you got somebody coming in, cleaning your house, right? That's the kid's job, right? How I grew up, right? You don't pay someone to do that. I couldn't afford that. But I recall sitting in their homes and just looking around thinking, man, there's a different world here, right? That I have, candidly, I didn't at that time, I don't have access to, right? And it wasn't, I wanted material things as much as, man, there's a different world out there. So there was an equal amount of motivation and encouragement to do different and to do better, not so that I could have stuff, but it was clear to me even then that I knew my mom she didn't necessarily enjoy doing that work.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't easy work. It wasn't work that, even people who clean things now don't get the respect that they deserve. But when you're in someone's home and your responsibility is to clean their home, I mean, I never heard anything derogatory or negative, but you kind of know, sitting there even as a kid, that is, man, she's the maid, right? Or she's just the hired help. And that was, for me, it was, I want to do better so that I can do better for my circle, right? Which included my parents, right? I wanted to do better, not just for me and not so that I could get an award or be on TV. I want to do better so that I can reach back and can help my family, right? And expose us to something different. So, growing up that way, it helped just really, for me, instill some values that I've applied every day, whether I was in a leadership position or not, but certainly as being a leader and a servant in an organization, those attributes to me have been priceless. Being able to leverage those very things, which is focusing on things that money can't buy, and also using some of those same negative things to motivate. Right? It's you gotta use it for what it is. But that was certainly a driving force behind really helping me see what I think is most important, but also keeping me focused when it was I could fall back and stay in the same environment and circles that I grew up in, or I can do some things different. And really, then I can have a reasonable expectation that things will get different or better because I'm listening, I'm watching, I'm learning, and more importantly, I'm applying it.
You're applying it. So you're saying something there, and it's totally resonating with me. So one of the things that I did in the book, and you refer to them as tenants or pillars, is I intentionally gave titles of things that I felt like once crippled me, things that I was ashamed of. So, some of my upbringing, I didn't realize how it was impacting me in everyday interactions until I had time to step out of it and really reflect. And I remember just waking up one day and I was like, who are you? In the sense that I was creating personas to fit in and be accepted, not realizing some of that was coming from a place of shame because of where I came from. And then if I did have moments that I would be kind of vulnerable and share, I felt like people would use it to exploit me or use it to keep me in my place. And so my question for you, have you ever had any of those feelings of being in those environments of not feeling like you belong there or you're good enough?
Right.
And if
Right.
so, how was you able to change that to accomplish the things you've done?
That's a great question. And short answer, I mean, absolutely yes. What I found, Rochelle, is that and this was like you, I had to look back to acknowledge that, man, that's what that was. I did not have the wherewithal to know that that's what it was when I was going through it.
Exactly.
But as I've grown and matured, I can look back and say that's exactly what that was. So I experienced the majority of that, where things being held against you, or you are feeling that, you don't fit in. That was as I was, I was younger. I'm thankful that I'm 51 now, right? I'm thankful that I sort of acknowledged and was exposed to some things that helped me sort of really strengthen my view on things and level out my view on things at a relatively early age. And I say relatively, meaning early in my professional career. So I recall vividly, again, I graduated from a technical school. I graduated from DeVry. And I recall vividly sitting in a room. I graduated technical school, degree in engineering, but I recall when I left, when I graduated from college, I immediately started working for a company with Southwestern Bell. And I was sitting around the table of other leaders, different ages. Most were older than I was because I'm recently graduating from college. And then I recall sitting in this room and you got everybody that's throwing around their credentials, right? I graduated from so-and-so, I've done this. And I was ashamed because there was, and sometimes I think there still is a stigma that if you don't graduate from this school or with this degree, then you're just less than, you don't belong here. And so that I was starting to buy into that nonsense, right? And so so that caused me to kind of fall back, right, and be less confident and less self-assured than I needed to be. And interestingly enough, it was I was complaining about it to a group of young people. I don't know. I was around a group of folks who were younger than me, and one of the people that just said, raised their hand, said, "Excuse me, but you're sitting around the table with them, right?" And then this young, and I said,
Yes.
"Yeah." And they said, "And you're making decisions that they are around the table, right?" And so here I am, a grown man, like, right? And so man, you're there, right?
Yes.
What are you ashamed of? And it was, you're right, right? And so that has been sort of the fuel behind why, and a lot of people don't always get this, and I don't try to explain it to some folks who don't get it. But when you get to a certain level, there are some folks who they only sort of roll with folks in that level,
That's
right? And for me, I just as I've gotten older, I have no desire to just roll with folks just because, right?
Yes.
If we are going to spend time and I'm going to learn from and I'm going to share, it's going to be with individuals that I have things in common with. And when I say in common with, I mean the way we look at the world. If we want the world to be a more peaceful, loving place, then that's what I'm talking about. It has nothing to do with their title, where they live, what they drive, and having early on learned the importance of it's not where you live, what you drive, or the title. It is what you bring to the table. It is your effort that you bring. And sometimes people won't acknowledge that for what it is. You won't be given credit for what you contribute. You have to be comfortable saying, but I brought it, right? And so you don't appreciate it, if you don't leverage it, that's on you, right? But I brought it, right? And I'm going to be comfortable and sleep at night knowing that I did it. And that also has encouraged me. I mean, from the boards that I sit on to the activities that I'm engaged in, it is always centered around those who don't have a voice or those who are disadvantaged, right? I was that kid who went to school, whose clothes was dirty, right? Who was stinky little kid, right? Because guess what? There are times when it is, all right, the simple things like being able to wash your clothes regularly was just not something that I and family could always do. And so that kid who was picked on, I guess, thank goodness I was a big kid, so that might have stopped some of the bullying. But when I see kids who are underserved and underprivileged and who don't have, to me, it's an obligation to intervene and to do what you can. You can't do everything, but you can do something. All right. And a lot of people, again, they get to a certain level. It is, now I only want to affiliate with that organization or with this group. And it is, shame on y'all, right? I'm going right back to the place that I come from. And I'm spending my time there and giving back there, not because I can relate. I know I've been there, and I know just having somebody there to say, man, it's going to be all right. Right?
That's right.
Can make the world of difference to a kid who is struggling or a kid who is already overwhelmed by, man, I see, and I can only imagine with all the access we have now to data, with social media, We didn't
Mm-hmm.
have all that when I was a kid. If I was exposed to all that was out there, given all I didn't have, that might have tipped me over. So I'm thankful that I grew up when I grew up, because right now, being a
Likewise.
young person and having seen so many folks with so much, and I know we're talking about stuff, but we
Mhm.
have to acknowledge that whether you are young and even as mature professionals, we have to guard ourselves against trying to show up as someone that we're not, or
Yeah.
to show up in a group to fit in with the group when it directly is in opposition to who we are. I've been perfectly comfortable, even knowing that there's consequence, that I'm going to show up as me. I'm the same me on Monday morning as I am on Thursday afternoon or Saturday night, right? The
Yeah.
me is me. You can like it or not, right? But whatever it is me, you're going to get the same me. And I think that level of authenticity and consistency. I've had some folks say, man, you're boring, right? You just, now I call it consistent, right? What you see
Yes.
is what you get. And I don't think it's all about flash and everything else. It's about value that you bring, and the value that you bring can be everything from having that kind word when a person needs it, to having that ear to listen when they need it. Sometimes folks need that stern talking to, because it is, better. And so I expect you to do better. And it's having the maturity to know not only that you need to step in, but when you step in, how to do it. And I think the environment that I grew up in, with all of its challenges,
Mm-hmm.
all of the pain that it had at a point, all was preparing me to be able to provide value to others around me at a point when I can give back, at a point when I can share, when my position or other things can be influential. All of how I grew up prepared me for, now that you are in this position and you have a unique opportunity to show up in a way that's going to help some folks. So show up, right?
Show up.
Show up and show up. Yeah, show up, do what needs to be done. And so it's that's what that to me has just been a driving force. But it's back to environment. Man, it's interesting to watch and even play back how things were when I was growing up. My wife and I, we talk about it a fair amount, just to help keep us focused on
Of
our
course.
mission today, right? Mission now, but it is based on how we grew up. And there were a lot of things about it that is, man, it wasn't pleasant at all,
Right.
but it all contributed to how I go about my daily life today. And honestly, I wouldn't change a thing, right? Would I love to have more stuff? Would I love to have clean clothes or clothes that weren't passed down from other family members? And I told you, I was a big kid, so getting past hand-me-down stuff didn't always work out, because I'm bigger than my big brother, right? So just because he's older don't mean I can fit his stuff, right? But your parents do the best they can do. And I've made a point of telling my parents, thank you, right? Thank you for just holding it together, right? Because you acknowledge now as a parent and as you're older that it's not easy. And for parents who both had just an elementary education, I mean, they did the absolute best they could do. So I would not for a moment look down on them or think poorly of them, because they did the best they can do. Do I, even with as little we had, do I think they could have did a little better? Well, as a kid, it's like, yeah, y'all still could have did a little better, right?
Of course, right.
The reality is, it's I wouldn't change a thing, and it's another way to remind folks that are going through it, whether as a child or as an adult in the working world now. Don't let the environment can be overwhelming. It can be all-consuming, but it can also be the foundation and the fuel for what's coming next. And it all depends on, how do I choose to apply this that I'm going through? I can either allow it to crush me, right? Or to discourage me, or I can allow for it to propel me to something bigger and something better, never forgetting, where you come from.
Okay, we're not at church, so I'm not going to shout or say amen, although I just got it out in my own way. But I'm so moved, and I'm a processor. So when you're speaking, I'm processing. I'm also taking notes, because I want to capture your story accurately. But as I'm listening to you, you exude such confidence and such courage. As I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, I wasn't like that at his age. I wasn't that sure of myself. You kind of alluded to it when you said, I learned to be this person in my 20s, like at a young age, which helped you throughout your career. But what would you say to individuals like me who still struggled along the way with their confidence in this area?
Yeah, the best advice I could give Rochelle would be, one is to is who you surround yourself with, right? As best you can, and this can be difficult too, but it is to the extent you can. Surround yourself with folks not just who are confident, but the reality is we're all cut a little differently. And again, one of the things that I'm most thankful for looking back is, because I had gone through enough experiences where it was made perfectly clear to me that, John, it doesn't matter what you do, right? Even if you do all the right things, the environment or people around you can feel or think what they're going to feel or think, right? And I think having gone through that at a young age and being, early 20s, mid 20s, saying, you know what, it's not that I said, I guess what, I figured this all out, but what I do, like you said, you're a processor. I don't understand why people do what they do, right? I'm not a psychologist. I'm not but I do pay attention to cause and effect, right? Okay. So when this happens, this tends to happen. So and maybe it's my engineering. I always enjoyed math and science. So my brain was always wired to sort of put things in categories and buckets. Maybe that helped me as a young age, and I didn't even know that that's how this was going to help me later in life. But, to your question of what do you tell individuals who are less confident is, one is to not beat themselves up. The world is going to the world's going to try to beat you up enough. All right. The last thing you should do is beat yourself up, but you do try to find ways to associate yourself with people who are confident, right? Who can help bring out the best in you. Sometimes, and I know whether you're talking about young people or even adults, we tend to, focus on how do you, surrounding yourself with the right people, right? And the right influences. And that's just as important for an adult as it is for a child. I know as grown folks, we like to tell the kids, be careful who you're hanging out with. Well, I say the same message to grown folks, right? I think we can be around people who just, they diminish, they take away from us versus add to us, all right? And we have to be very careful, because if I'm struggling with confidence, the last thing I need is to be around someone who's going to constantly chip away or erode my confidence, or not put me in positions to build my confidence, right? And so I would encourage young and old alike is, if there are things that are a struggle for you and a challenge, really do pay attention to surrounding yourself with people who are just going to bring out the best in you. And that can be friends, acquaintances, coworkers. You can't always control the circle of people that you're around, but where and when you can control it, be very thoughtful about putting the right people in your corner, because if you have the wrong people, you could end up struggling with confidence for your entire life, right? Or your entire professional career. And that's a real challenge. But paying attention to, I'm going to surround myself with folks who, and when I say like-minded, it's not, I'm saying folks who can, if I know I struggle with confidence, for example, I want to be around folks who are going to say, all right, try this or do That's this. Right. I'm there to catch you, right? If it gets tough, I'm going to intervene or jump in. And you need people around you who are real friends, right? And when I say friends, I don't, that's the other thing my wife and I joke about, because she has a couple of 3 or 4 friends from high school. They still hang out now, which I just think is wonderful.
I do too.
I don't have that. Yeah, I don't have that. I don't, and my daughters would ask, Daddy, who are your friends? My daughters are grown now, 26 and 21. Okay. Like, who are your friends? It's like, man, it kind of feels kind of sad. It is. I don't know. I mean, it's people who I kind of hung out with, or people who I keep in touch with now. But unlike Mom, who's got, these friends where they've been hanging out since junior high, I don't have that. But I say all that to say, even for me, I had to acknowledge that there are people who are good for me, and I need to pour into them and hold them accountable for pouring into me so that I can be better. And again, for those who choose to just let their circle be filled by chance, right? I hang out with them because we work together, or I hang out with them because we live in the same neighborhood, or I hang out with them because, we go to the same church. I mean, fill in the blank. It is, we have to be way more intentional about who gets into that inner circle, because it's the folks in that inner circle that are going to have a profound impact on how we go about our day, how we grow, how we respond to things.
All right, listeners, Mr. Brown is dropping gems today. So I hope that you are taking notes. I'm taking copious notes, and I'm the interviewer. And so I hope that you're really learning a lot, and not only in your personal or professional life, but just in interactions with everyday friendships or relationships. He's saying you have to be intentional. Don't just befriend someone because you're at school together, you're at work together, you're at church together. Be very intentional based on who you are. So I'm hearing like we need some commonality, but not necessarily based on what we have or how we grew up, but maybe we have common values. Or like you said, we value people being lifted up and not being pushed down, or we value seeing people accomplish their goals. And so surrounding yourself with like-minded people in that regard, not necessarily based on what they have. So I kind of want to touch on image because you touched on it. Like when you're in corporate America or you're in certain environments, there is kind of this stigma of if you don't have a certain title or you're at a certain level or you live in a certain neighborhood, zip codes are really big. And so people tend to either disassociate from you or they gravitate to you, maybe not even genuinely because of who you are, but because of what you do. And so have you ever experienced someone throughout your career treating you as if you had the audacity to show up? We talked about showing up as the man that you are. If so, just tell us a little more about your experience.
Yeah, and that's a great question, and it's and on interestingly enough, on both ends of things, right? This is where the individual has to be. I'm encouraging us to find ways to be really comfortable in our skin, right? Because the reality is, people may accept or reject you for whatever reasons they choose. So again, if you go over through the course of a professional career or the course of our lives, this shows up differently. I have been in circles where those who consider themselves to have arrived, it is you can't be here, and it's well, why not? Because my being here has nothing to do with me wanting to fit in. I'm here because whatever the criteria was, whatever the requirements are, I meet them. Now that may make you uncomfortable, but you're going to have to get over it, right? And so it comes down to there being a real sense of self, and a sense of there. If I'm not accepted, you know what? I'm good with that. This is back to being really thoughtful about your circle. I can be rejected by a whole bunch of folks, but I know I have this inner circle I can go to where I'm always good, right? And I'm part of others' inner circles where they know that they're always good because I'm in that circle. And so there have been numerous occasions where, from a professional perspective, where I tend to at times be the only person of color at certain tables. And as a result, there are a bunch of folks who will always at times say, well, why is he here? Why? Which is, that's so very disappointing and frustrating, where we still live in a time where you have to look a certain way in order to be in a certain place, which to me is just mind-boggling, right? I've equally been in circles where it is, sometimes you get to a spot where as you continue to grow professionally, even where you come from, folks will start to accept you a little less, right? It's like I took your card, right? You don't have your card anymore, right? Once you left, we took the card. Somehow have to earn it back. There are times where we operate in this middle space that is not accepted by the people and the environment that we came from, because things are different now, just different. They see you differently because you're not here anymore, literally or physically, right? Then you're not accepted by the groups that you've moved into, or the folks are saying you should be here. So it's one of those back to being really comfortable with who you are. And again, on the job, I've seen that a number of times, right? Where it is, and which is why for me, it's always been, here's the ticket for success, at least for me, which is, John, show up as John every day.
Okay.
Right? Just show up as John every day. And regardless to the circle that you're in, right? I've been in some of the highfalutin circles where folks are like, man, who's this guy, right? He's coming in here talking about stuff that we don't normally talk about. Well, that's John. If y'all don't want to hear that conversation, then go to another table, right? I'm not here for y'all, right? I'm here to be me. And if you don't like me, then go somewhere else, right? Go talk to somebody else. I didn't ask you to come over here and be all in my face, right? So go somewhere else, right? And similarly, right, it's a matter of saying, when I show up in any circle, I've just found that it naturally starts to happen where it is, when you show up as yourself all the time, people who want to be a part of you, right, and want and enjoy what you have to say and enjoy sharing things with you, it just starts to naturally happen. And when you take a step back, you say, I'm good with this, right? Because it wasn't forced. I wasn't forced into moving into a circle or not. It was, I just want to be me. And I encourage folks to be themselves. Because I've had folks say, man, John, you walked in the room and the room just lit up.
Mhm.
And I said, well, here, you're right. The room did light up, but here's why the room lit up. Because I came into the room and I made it okay for everybody to turn their light on, right? So
Beautiful.
yeah, the room lit up. It did, but it wasn't because I came in. It's because when I came in, I gave everybody permission to turn your light on, right? You don't turn your light off because of someone else or because of what other people think, because otherwise you just go through life, through your professional career. And I've seen so many who have been derailed professionally because they're paying such close attention to what are they going to think or what are they going to think that they lose identity. And it is, you had so much to bring to the table, but you failed to bring it because you were so concerned about what other folks were going to say or think, when if you had just said, look, no matter consequence, I'm going to show up as me, and we're going to see what that does, right? It doesn't mean that's automatic. It's a gimme that you're going to be promoted or you're going to move up, but it is, I'm going to sleep tonight. And I've been encouraging folks for years, your primary objective is to sleep. Man, what are you talking about? Is that no? You got, if you sleep at night because you woke up and you went through that day, did the best you possibly could do, treated folks just as fairly as you could. You took a punch through a punch, right? Not literally, but you rest at night knowing that you gave your best. And to me, I think that's where a lot of us fall short, is that we can be so consumed by what other people think and what other people are going to think about us, that we second guess ourselves and show up as somebody totally different than who we are. And it is, look, whether I make it or not, I'm going to do it as me. And so and I'm comfortable with that, right? It's I don't have to have the stuff that other folks may think they need. It is, man, if I've got a few folks in my circle who I know I can show up for and they've got my back, all the other stuff, you can keep all the rest, right? Because that's not what's going to get me some rest at night. And so it comes down with that individual drive to just really be authentic, be yourself, and to be content with whatever that means, right? Not everybody's going to be a CEO. Not everybody's going to be an NBA player. Not everybody's going to be, we gotta be comfortable with where we are and just be the best at wherever we are, and be comfortable with that, because somebody's always watching, somebody's always learning, and someone can always draw inspiration from our story. No matter what levels we achieve in life, it is more the character, I believe, of a person that we can really make a difference in the lives of others, not the job or the initials before or after your name. It is, man, can I count on you? Can you show up to be there and available when I need you? And again, those are all things that are that don't matter sort of where you work, where you live, what you drive. And again, back to those things that I learned as a poor kid, which is, hey man, if you don't have money to buy stuff, you better put a whole lot of focus on everything else. And out of necessity, it's exactly what I did.
I love that. So inspiring. I'm so inspired. I'm filled right now. So admittedly, I do these interviews, because I do want to create a platform to hear remarkable stories like yours. I feel like we as a society put so much focus on your status. If you're a celebrity, if you have a certain platform, and you epitomize servant leadership. And I knew that when you reached out to me, because, and humbly, I'm building, like I'm becoming. Whatever it is that I'm supposed to be doing, it's definitely in the building stages. And so for you to reach out, it speaks to your character. I knew this is the man that you are. Now, hopefully, people who know you and who don't, they'll get to hear this side of you. So one question I typically ask before wrapping up each interview is, why did you pick the pillar that you picked? Now, most people kind of cover it throughout the interview. You've done a phenomenal job doing that as well. So I'm not going to ask that question. I'm not going to waste the rest of our time or your energy on that question. So what I'm going to ask you is, if there was one thing, or maybe two, that you would take away from the environment that you grew up in that made you the man that you are today, and you wanted to encourage a mentee, or you wanted to encourage one of your leaders or someone that you know personally that you want to see succeed.
Yeah.
What is that one or two things you would tell them to focus on?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's one of those. So, and there's so much. One thing would be is that, there's some things that are beyond your control.
Okay.
All right. And just acknowledge that. And because there are things beyond your control, uh, how how you let that define you is the one thing you can't control, right? You can't control the necessary, especially when you're young, the environment that you're growing up in, the family that you have, right? You're born into that. You can't control that, but you absolutely can control how it affects you, right? I've been around alcoholism, I've been around abuse, right? And I've had the opportunity to say either I can go down that path or I can note that that's not a thing that I want to be around or involved in. And
Absolutely.
I'm thankful that I chose the latter, right? And
Yes.
so my message goes young or old, which is there are some things you can't control. Acknowledge that. But for the things you can control, you gotta put in the work and the effort to just do your best. And again, it's your best. Stop comparing yourself to other folks. You be the best you that you can be, and be content with that. Because again, not everyone will sit atop the largest organizations. Not everyone will win championships. Right? Some of us are just going to go through life living a normal life, but doing the best that we can. So there's some things you cannot control about your environment. Just acknowledge that. But the things you can control, you got to give it 100% because you all you got, and be really thoughtful about who you surround yourself with, because just like any other external factor, right? Who you surround yourself with really does have the ability to either propel you to greater heights or to anchor you in something negative that you don't
Yes.
want. So please, and that's again for young and the older, is we have to all be vigilant about surrounding ourselves with the right people who are good for us, and then we have to be prepared to show up in the most positive way for them as well, because the old adage, and the proverb, it taking a village, it
Yes.
absolutely does. And as an adult and even as a kid, there's some villages we can't control who's in the village, but there are some that we get to build. And if and when, because you will eventually have an opportunity to build your village, build wisely, because that village is going to have the opportunity to help you achieve things that you candidly wouldn't be able to achieve otherwise.
Wow. I process. I'm going to take a moment and just pause.
Yeah.
Ooh, that was a lot. And what I want to say to those of you who are listening in is this man took time out of his very busy schedule on a Monday. I may not be in corporate America anymore, but I do know Monday is the busiest day of the week. He scheduled this time at 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And I'm so honored. And I not only gained just so much insight, so much knowledge, so much wisdom, but I know that you have too. So, Mr. Brown, what I'm going to say to you is continue to lead out of authenticity, compassion, passion. I know that everything that you said today speaks to your character, and so many people will vouch for that. I did a little intel before our interview. So, Sandra Marshall, one of your former direct reports, had nothing but great respect and admiration and was just super excited, that we were having this interview today. And so I just want everyone listening in just to continue to show up, be intentional about who you surround yourself with. And although you can't control the environment you grew up in, you can control what you do today. So it's not about how you started or where you started, but how you finish is in your control. So I just want to ask you to please rate and review this podcast and tune in to a very powerful and captivating interview next week. But before I wrap up, Mr. Brown, do you have any closing remarks for us?
Just a couple of things. And number one, Rochelle, thank you for the opportunity to interview today. As I said, I too can vouch for the value that you have been delivering from the time we crossed paths in corporate America, even to now.
Mm.
So I'm thankful for your platform because you're giving a voice to and you're giving words to things that need to be shared. So thank you for all that you are doing. And I'm available. You let me know how else I could support this great work that you're doing. And I'm all in because, as I mentioned before, the more Rochelle's we have in the world, the better place it is. And so anything that I can do to support you and your listeners and viewers, for those who'll be watching this, y'all need to check this out. All right. This is, she's bringing topics topics, not only in her book and conversations. This is real stuff that is game and life changing. And out of all the stuff we could be spending our time listening to and watching, tune that other stuff out, right? This is the real deal right here. And Rochelle, again, I sincerely thank you for all that you are doing to give back to so many, and that too, I trust will pay dividends over time. So great work in all that you're doing, and again, however I can be engaged going forward, you got a cheerleader and a supporter in me. So just let me know how I can engage. All right.
Thank you. And I'm going to hold you to that because one of the things
Absolutely.
we didn't touch on was mentorship. And that's something that I haven't had throughout my career. And we're not going to spend time on it talking about yours. And if you had that to help shape and mold you as well, but I would definitely be following back up with you about that. And so I just want to respect his time. I hope you all have enjoyed this episode. You have it. Authentic people, real stories. Thank you for tuning in. And please tune in next week. Rochelle Armstrong, leading authentically.